threw the mug with all my strength into the opposite wall, and it shattered into small pieces. I didn't want all this to happen to me. I didn't want my sister to become my mom. Hi, my name's Alice. I'm 14. Just a year ago, a tragedy happened in my family. It turned my whole life upside down. At that moment, a person whom I considered a distant stranger, just helping me, suddenly turned out to be the closest person I've ever had. Okay, first things first. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that will definitely touch your heartstrings. Katie was my mom's daughter from her first marriage, which did not end very well. No one ever told me the details, but one day, I overheard a conversation between my mom and my grandma in the kitchen. They were saying Katie's dad was a jealous man, and he often raised his hand to my mom. At first, she endured it for the sake of her daughter, but when Katie turned 5, she packed her things up. Without saying a word to her husband, she ran away to another city to start a new life. The man didn't agree to a divorce for a long time, but in the end, he had to give in. My mom met my dad at work. At first, they were just colleagues, since my mom wasn't going to start a new relationship at that time. Her ex-husband was enough for her, but my dad was persistent. Over time, they became close friends. They were often together and they had mutual friends. My dad and little Katie quickly found a common language. He loved to play with her. He gave her some gifts and always treated her with candies. Apparently, these things melted the ice on my mom's cold heart. She accepted my dad's courtship and they started dating. A year later, they got married. Katie loved Mom's new husband more, though she knew her dad. But my dad was always kind and caring to her. When Katie was 9, she found out she would have a younger sister. I mean, me. As my mom told me, she was very happy about it. She said she would always take care of me, play with me, read me bedtime stories, and sing lullabies. Anyway, everyone in our family was looking forward to me. But then something went wrong. At school, one of the guys learned Katie was about to have a younger sister and started saying all sorts of nasty things to her. Seemed like when I was born, my parents would stop loving her, playing with her and taking care of her. They would spend all their attention on a small, screaming bundle. My mom would love me more as she was still very young and wanted little kids. And Katie was already a big girl, and she was able to do many things by herself. Of course, Katie was very upset. She came home, started crying, and told our parents she no longer wanted to have a younger sister because the 3 of them lived quite well together. My mom and dad were very surprised by Katie's words. They tried to calm her down, hugged her, but Katie wouldn't stop. From that day on, my mom no longer had a quiet life. Katie was always mad at Mom and Dad. She said she would leave home as soon as her younger sister appeared, or take her outside when Mom and Dad were sleeping. Of course, our parents were terrified. They even took Katie to a psychologist. The doctor talked to her and explained a second kid in the family would never change her life. Her mom and dad would always love her. Fortunately, these meetings somehow worked. Even though Katie still was not okay with having a younger sister, she stopped being mad. My mom and dad breathed a sigh of relief. So when I was born, Katie was already 10. She went with my dad to the hospital to pick up my mom. She looked very happy. Probably everyone who looked at us that day was sure we were a strong and very friendly family. For the first week, at least, my mom told me Katie never left me. She tried to be next to me all the time. She rocked me, helped my mom change my clothes, and bathe me. Probably at that moment, I was a lively and very interesting doll to her that she wanted to play with. But the interest passed, and Katie started to notice what her classmates were talking about. My mom spent all her time on me. My dad worked all day long and was too tired in the evenings. Sometimes he helped my mom with me. Katie was at school most of the day. She also had extra music and dance classes. In the evening, she did her homework alone in her room. There were no more family evening walks and watching cartoons or movies together. It was impossible to laugh loudly, shout, listen to music, as there was a kid in the house who could be disturbed by the noise. However, I was not a calm kid. According to my mom's stories, I often woke up in the middle of the night and cried, raising everyone who lived in the house with my loud voice. Anyway, as you can guess, my relationship with my older sister had not gone well since my childhood. When I got older, Katie was reluctant to stay with me. She wanted to go out, have fun with her friends, go to parties, instead of babysitting her younger sister and watching cartoons. For the first years of my life, she was literally chained to me. I wanted her to teach me how to draw, go to an amusement park, or to the zoo together. But Katie refused all the time and left home, saying she had better things to do. I heard my sister often having fights with my parents, especially with my mom. They argued about grades, parties, and my sister's morning homecomings, the shady company my sister hung out with, and all the other benefits of being a teenager. I was very hurt to see my mom crying because of Katie. When I plucked up the courage and told my sister she was doing wrong, she only replied in a rude way it was all because of me, and it would have been better if I'd never been born. Of course, her words upset me very much. I started crying. Mom saw this and wanted to find out what happened. When she realized Katie was the one to blame for this, she yelled at her. That evening, Katie left home for the first time. From all the conversations between my mom and dad, I realized Katie had been staying over at her friend's for a week. When she finally returned home, she announced after graduation she planned to go to a college in another city and live there in a dorm. My mom and dad didn't object. When my sister left, the three of us lived together. It got more peaceful at home. No more fights and yelling. We spent quiet family evenings together. Over time, I realized I missed Katie. When Katie graduated from college, she stayed in that city to live. She had a young man, Nick. They came to visit us once a year for Christmas. My sister became cooler. Now she was mature, understanding, and peaceful. She accepted most of the things the way they were, but we weren't close. We had no common topics for conversation. She wasn't particularly interested in my life, and I wasn't interested in hers. I still remembered her words that she never wanted me to be born. The day, which is still hard for me to remember, started perfectly. We woke up late and had breakfast. My parents and I were on vacation. We chose the country where we wanted to go together and relax. So we bought the plane tickets and booked a hotel. I was looking forward to it. My parents decided they needed to buy a new suitcase for the trip, so they went shopping. I was too lazy to go anywhere, and I stayed at home. I turned on my favorite series, ate ice cream, and enjoyed my life. In the evening, my mom and dad were still not home. I was worried. I called them, but their phones were switched off. Fearing something might have happened to them, I called Katie, but she said she hadn't spoken to her mom since yesterday. I was very scared. By night, when not a single store was open, I called my sister again, and she decided it was worth calling the hospitals and police stations. What if an accident happened to my parents and they needed help? There was no news until the morning. I somehow fell asleep. I woke up to the sound of the front door opening. I was happy that Mom and Dad had finally returned and I rushed to the hallway. But I saw Katie and Nick there instead. They had pale faces, red eyes and noses and bitten lips. I realized something terrible had happened. That day, our parents were killed in a car accident. They were driving to a mall, and a truck drove into them at full speed because its brakes failed. There was no chance of survival. They died instantly. I froze in shock. I didn't want to believe I would never see my mom and dad again. How could it be? I'm all alone now. Katie came up to me and hugged me tightly. It was the first time in my life my sister showed me at least some care and attention. Unable to stand it, we both started crying, and we couldn't calm down for a long time. I hardly remember the events of the following days. Apparently, a funeral is an event the memory erases from the head automatically. I knew I cried a lot that day. Katie was always there for me. She held my hand and didn't leave me for a minute. She calmed me down, gave me some tea, made me eat something. A week later, during our dinner, Katie told me she had taken custody of me, and I would go with her and Nick to another city, and we would sell the house. I don't know why, but I was very angry with her at that moment. Why did she decide everything for me? I threw the mug with all my strength into the opposite wall, and it shattered into small pieces. I didn't want all this to happen to me. I didn't want my sister to become my mom. Surprisingly, Katie didn't get mad at me in return. She came up to me, hugged me, and let me cry on her shoulder. She lost her parents too, and it was hard for her. I've been living with Katie and her fiancé for a year now. I was afraid we wouldn't be able to communicate well, but Katie really replaced my mom and was there for me. She supported me, helped me, comforted me, and brought me up. I wish we hadn't passed through such a hardship to become close. Tell me, do you get along with your brothers and sisters? Do you have conflicts? How do you solve them? Text your answers in the comments section. If you enjoyed my story, don't forget to click thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to see new videos. Bye, everyone!